Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification Course. And my name is William Krause. Welcome and have a seat if you're here with us. And if you're joining us online, please don't forget, you can go to the top of the Facebook page there and you'll see a drop-down menu that has the books there that we're in the Building Moral Excellence unit of the Peaceful Solution, which is the we call it the first in the line of the high school series. We are currently finishing up Character, Society, and the World. And I believe that's, what chapter is that, 7? Chapter 7? Chapter 5. Chapter 5. Yeah, chapter 5. It's actually the final chapter. A lot of the other books have 7 chapters. This one only has 5. But Character, Society, and the World is where we left off. Chris left off in the last class. You'll have to excuse me tonight. My eyes are a little bit blurry, and I have some kind of sandstorm going on out there or something. It looks like Saudi Arabia. But we'll make it through. And the sound booth got the slides, right? Okay. Okay, great. Sorry about the delay there. I think I got some dust in my brain, too. All right. So, again, we're on Character, Society, and the World. And Chris left off. I'll give you a page number here. We were talking about, he was talking about drinking and the effects of drinking on teens. Let's see. Give me just a second here. Yeah, you went over Death of an Innocent. Remember the poem. We'll look at that again a little bit too, because there's something I want to comment. I want to make a comment on to the parents out there. And I believe he went over the cold hard facts on page 187, and he kind of left it there for me to review. And we always do a review of the former class. That way we can kind of get back in our mind again what we were looking at here. So remember, we're talking about how character affects society and the world as a whole. You know, we started out in lesson 1 learning about how character, is more than meets the eye, and how we've been learning throughout this book all the way up through the 4th chapter in leadership about how we've been learning to govern ourselves and lead ourselves, because without the knowledge that comes from the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, and I want to qualify what I just said, because our parents and our teachers at school when we were growing up, they did the very best that they could with what they had, available to them. They didn't have a curriculum like we have here. Okay, they didn't have a curriculum that was laid out by individuals that knew the importance of morals in character development. Okay, that's the important part that you really need to get in your mind, the morality behind it. Because there's a lot of character education programs out there, but they don't stress morality. They don't stress the importance of moral character, and they don't stress what morals actually are. Okay, and they don't, in their ideas sometimes of moral or right behavior, actually conflicts with what morality actually means. Because in the Peaceful Solution, remember, we teach that moral means it doesn't bring harm. It doesn't bring harm to anybody physically, mentally. It doesn't harm the environment. It doesn't harm anything. It's harmless. So, we're not boasting in that way. We're trying to make a point that you can grab from other resources, but those other sources that we can grab information from might not necessarily be guiding you in the perfect way of peace, because they don't have the moral factor. Okay, and that's what you got to really remember about the Peaceful Solution Program. That's what sets it apart from all other programs. And the peaceful solution also stresses that you must practice these principles to have peace. You can't have peace without them. Okay, you might have peace for a moment if you don't follow it. You kill your enemies and then you think everything's fine. But remember, it only lasts for how long? First of all, I don't know how you could have peace killing your enemies, because I know myself, I have a conscience, so it would be bothering me that I was killing people. But I remember some people are also taught that when you kill your enemy, there's no, that's just your duty. That's your duty to do. But we know even from people that come back from war, they have what's called post-traumatic stress. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, from harming people, because it actually goes against the human nature to do something like that. So they have to deal with the consequences that come from bringing harm to another person. So there are what you call consequences for immoral behavior, and you might not see them right away, but you do see them. They do manifest as sometimes instantly, but sometimes later on in life. All right, so I'm going to be picking up again, as I said, in the cold hard facts, but I want to make a mention of this poem that Chris read, "Death of an Innocent." I want to go back to that. I want to put up the first visual, if you could, because I always try to stress this to the parents, and you should too. If you ever we give a lot of presentation to parents, and parents tend to think, I don't know how they could now, because now probably back in the 40s or 30s this is possible, but I don't know, in the last 50 or 60 years, I don't know how you could think you could send your child to a party and that there's not some kind of sexual activity, drugs, and drinking going on. But in this particular poem, it says, "I went to the party, Mom, and I remember what you said. You told me not to drink alcohol, so I drank soda instead." But what's wrong with that picture? Would you send your child to a viper's den? Would you send your child to an activity where there's drinking going on when they're underage? If you knew as a parent, if you knew that there was illegal activity taking place, would you send your child to that activity? So, sorry, moms, no sodas being served at these parties. Okay? It's not an alternative. In fact, you could bring your own soda with you, but is that going to stop the illegal activity that's taking place all around you? Because first of all, they're all underage, right? Is drinking allowed when I don't know, what's the drinking age in Texas? 21? Okay, so if you're there at a kegger and you're a teenager, you're actually breaking the law. And if you send your child to a party knowing that there's alcohol being served, which you should know, they're not going to be having cake and ice cream, sitting around blowing little horns, and party favors and sprinkles and everything. That's not what's taking place at the parties, parents. So either wake up and stop fooling yourself, okay? Remember, that's why I said most of us should remember as parents now, what was going on at the party when you went to the party? Back in the 80s, the 70s. What were they doing at the party? Well, when you were 5 or 6 at the party, they were eating cake and ice cream and cupcakes, right? But that's not what they're doing at that age when they're teenagers, right? So, parents, don't send your children to the party unless you want to be a party to immoral conduct. You don't want your daughter to get pregnant. You don't want your son to get a girl pregnant. You don't want your son shot. or charged with a crime because he went to some drinking party where the police can raid the party, then don't send them, and don't allow it. As parents, you are supposed to be in control of your home. You're the guard of your home. No, it's not force when you tell your child you can't go to the party. That's not force. That's called keeping rules. That's called being a parent. That's called guarding and protecting your children. Now, can you physically keep them from going? If they decide they're going to go and they're going to be rebellious and do what they want to do, well, not necessarily. You know, I've had parents that have been sent to us to the Peaceful Solution because I had one mom whose daughter refused to listen to her. And she said, "No, Mom, I'm going out with that boy and I'm going to that party." And the mom grabbed her by the arm to keep her from going out the door, and CPS charged her with child abuse for trying to keep her daughter from going to the party because she physically grabbed the child's arm. The next day, the daughter went to school with a bruise on her arm, and the school nurse saw it. And where'd you get that bruise? Oh, my mom grabbed me. You know, of course, without knowing all the facts, of course, the police are called, CPS gets involved, and mother ends up under scrutiny by Child Protective Services. The mother, in her mind, was trying to protect her daughter from harm. Okay? That's what she was trying to do. We don't teach, you know, that we shouldn't slap, hit, etc. We shouldn't do things like that as parents. We don't teach that in the Peaceful Solution. But we should correct our children. We should try to reason with them. We should educate them in these things so they don't want to go that way. But to ignore it and just say, well, it's, you know, they have to choose for themselves, you're being a fool as a parent. You're being a fool if you don't take an active role in your child's life. As a matter of fact, in the Peaceful Solution, we teach in the parenting manual that we haven't got to yet, but we will get to it, that you as an adult have an obligation to check your child's backpack. You have an obligation. Oh, I can't do that. I would be stealing. I would be trespassing in my child's stuff. No, you'd be being a fool if you don't do it, because your children get involved in things sometimes, and if you're not watching out for them and you're not checking things, there's a lot of things they can make you think they're not doing that they're doing. So don't be fools as parents, be wise. Okay? All right, so let's turn over to page 187 now, and let's look at a few cold, hard facts. And they're really super cold because, you know, sometimes reality, ugly reality is cold, right? But we got to teach these things. We can't just ignore them and act like, you know, we're living in a society that's peachy keen right now, because it's not. So on page 187, and I probably better go back and read the step here before we do this. So let's go back to LP. Give me a second here. We're going to go to lesson plan page 5G, or actually 5F. 5F, I believe. Yeah. Okay. 5F, and we're going to look at step number 4. Okay. Step 4, is that where we're at? Yep. Explain to students that 2 examples of irresponsible choices that can ripple outward affecting others are drinking and driving and engaging in premarital sex. Premarital sex, sex before the marriage obligation. Have the class turn to the section entitled More Than Just a Personal Choice, found on page 184, and allow students to listen to the poem from the teacher's manual audio lessons, which is the one I just referred to. They can follow along on page 185 and have students complete the accompanying exercise, understanding the main point on 186, or assign for homework. Follow up on home assignments by discussing their answers as a class. Emphasize that when we maintain a moral character, we think not only of our own needs and wants, but of others as well. Okay, so let's go back to page 187 and a few cold hard facts. And let's put up the next visual for everyone. It says 1/3 of high school students binge drink one or more times a month. Now, that means that, and this was written back in 2003, so, this is 22 years ago, and I think it was much higher even then, but I guarantee you it's higher now, because the morals have not gotten any better, okay? Matter of fact, if you notice in the state of Florida, they were trying to, they see, you got some people in power right now that see the danger of the spring break. But the children, rather than abandoning the idea of spring break, I can't even talk on this program about what goes on at the party at spring break parties. But it's filthy, it's disgusting, it's nasty, and it should actually be illegal, outlawed. It should be, because of the things that are taking place. Okay, but some of the authorities are now seeing how disgusting it actually is, but rather than, I think they banned it at a certain beach, so the children found another place to go. And I say children, I'm talking about college students. So it's not, they're not abandoning the spring break. They just found another beach to go to, I guess, instead of Miami Beach or wherever they used to go. I don't know what beach it was, but it was in Florida, I think is what I read about. But binge drinking means these drinking parties where there's, the keggers, like I just showed the picture of. If you could put it back up. I don't know if you know how drunk people can get off one keg of beer, but when we had keggers in high school, one keg got everyone plenty drunk, and there would be lots of people at the party. There would be 60, 70 people there at that party. And there was beer coming out everybody's nose, literally. And while we were drinking, in some of the bedrooms, there was some extracurricular activity going on. Do I have to tell you what was going on in the bedroom? With your daughter? And 3 or 4 other boys? Do we have to be this stupid? And you don't think that that's connected to what Chris talked about last time when he left off on the next page where it talked about the, teen pregnancies? Unwanted teen pregnancies. Hey, look, if you don't want to get pregnant, let's see. First step to not getting pregnant, don't take your clothes off with a boy. Right? Don't go to the party and get yourself drunk where boys can take advantage of you. It's really horrible because you know what? A lot of those teen pregnancies are ending up in murder. It's called abortion. Yeah, I'm sorry that might hurt some people's feelings, but that's what it is. When you take a baby's life, you're murdering that baby. Okay, so if you think it's not a big deal, and it's just a what do you call it? A rite of spring. It's more than that. It says teens who drink are 5 times more likely to drop out of high school than those who don't. And like I said, there's a lot of people that are drinking at the school. Okay, and at least once a week there was a kegger where I was from, and everybody knew about it. Word spread like wildfire. Hey, they're having a kegger over at so-and-so's. Let's put up that next visual. There's a word here that we need to understand about. It says alcohol lowers inhibitions, putting teens at risk for STDs, pregnancies, and rape. Now, that word inhibitions, we'll go over that here in a minute because it's very important to understand what are inhibitions and how do they become lowered when you're under the influence of alcohol and drugs. It says 500,000 young people have had sex while under the influence. 500,000 young people have had sex while under the influence of alcohol. I guarantee that number is much higher than that. Okay, it's much higher than that. This is very conservative. This is only what they know about. This is only the ones that admit they did, or that they found. Alcohol diminishes means it it eliminates it makes it very hard. It diminishes the ability to make responsible decisions at a time when responsible decisions are most needed, because you cannot make a wise decision, a moral decision, with a clouded mind, clouded by alcohol or drugs, or even clouded by emotion, clouded by some kind of the emotion of love. Remember what we learned about in self-control unit, chapter 2, about self-control and emotions, love. They call love and emotion, and how, you can be so overwhelmed with that love, love at first sight or whatever they like to call it, that you think, man, I got to go to bed with him, because I know he loves me, just this one time, So you got to control even your positive emotions, because mind can become clouded by those emotions, positive or negative. So let's look at the word inhibitions. Let's go to the next visual. And I'm going to use this story right here to help you to understand. This is not anything against this man. This is to help you understand what inhibition actually means. And this is an article from Psychology Today. It says, does alcohol uncover your true self? It says, in 2006, when Mel Gibson was pulled over and arrested for drunk driving, he unleashed a vitriolic anti-Semitic tirade that went viral. I don't know if y'all remember that, but he got pulled over by a cop, and he started speaking against the Hebrew people. He was drunk. The incident alarmingly raised the question, and if you remember also, he was eliminated from Hollywood. Hollywood had nothing to do with him for many, many years. In fact, he's just now kind of making a comeback. But for many years, he was blacklisted from Hollywood from what he said about the Jewish people. It says the incident alarmingly raised the question as to whether he meant what he said, namely about Jews being responsible for all world wars. I guess that's what the tirade was about, allegedly, to the police officer when he was pulled over. He started letting it all loose because he'd been drinking. So let's go to the next slide. It says, blaming excessive alcohol intake for his patently racist remarks, Gibson protested, quote, I am not a bigot. Hatred of any kind goes against my faith, unquote. But mental health professionals weighing in on his unfortunate slip of the tongue didn't perceive that explanation, or rather rationalization, as sufficient to get him off the hook. Whether or not he was drunk, many argued, his vehemently derogatory speech nonetheless reflected a deep-seated prejudice. When sober, this inflammatory bias could be suppressed. In other words, when he's sober, he could keep it inside and not say anything about it, even though he might have felt it. But in an inebriated, altered state, in a drunken state of consciousness, it could non-volitionally emerge. That's called letting loose. It's called lowering your inhibitions. Like, for instance, certain things are wrong, and you wouldn't dare say certain things even if you felt it, if you were in your right mind, so to speak. But when you're drunk, right, when you're under the influence of alcohol, it all starts coming out. Freely starts coming out. Now, does that necessarily mean that's your true self? No, you're not in your right mind, but the psychologists say, well, it does allow your things that you normally suppress will come out more freely if you're drunk. So it could tell you that there's something that you're actually harboring, because why would you say it if you didn't really think it, or if it wasn't really within you? So remember, inhibitions, when it lowers girls' and boys' inhibitions, what it means is they start, it's kind of like playing spin the bottle, you know. Girls wouldn't normally play spin the bottle unless they were drinking. You know, they had to have a few beers before they started doing stuff like that. Girls that were normally very shy and introverted, they started drinking, and all of a sudden, they were the life of the party. It's like, wow, is that the same girl that sits next to me in class? She's normally really quiet, and she wears those geeky glasses, and she's really studious, and now look at her. She looks like Sandy on Grease. That's what occurs when you drink. Okay? It all starts coming out. The inhibitions are no longer there. So everybody understand what inhibitions mean? Yes? Okay, great. All right. So let's now go to page 188. Now that we've reviewed what Chris had gone over, I want to make sure I didn't miss something here. Okay. All right. So on page 188 at the top, it says, let's go ahead. I don't have that slide, but it says another example of a personal choice that can ripple outward is the choice to engage in premarital sex. Over 1 million teens become pregnant every year in the U.S. alone. And these pregnancies are the result of irresponsible and impulsive choices that affect the lives of the adolescent parents, the child or children born to them, their families, schools, and communities. And I would say also the state, their nation, and the world. The environment, Chris told you last class, we went over this extensively in the self-control book regarding STDs and global warming or climate change. STDs in the water, STDs in the food, STDs on the doorknobs, STDs in the swimming pools, STDs, STDs, STDs. Did you study it? Did you look at the article from Fox News back in 2007, June of 2007, how there was herpes in the coral reef? That was back in 2007. This is 18 years ago. The scientists knew it then. They found STDs in air samples. STDs in air samples in San Antonio, Texas. They found STDs in air samples, which means they're airborne. They can travel. But we think it's just between the young boy and the young girl, or the man and the woman there. It's just between them. What they do in the backseat of that car, what difference does it make? It's not affecting me. That's what I keep hearing. Well, you're going to find out it's affecting you in more ways than one. So, question of the day, and you don't have to answer this. I'll answer it for you. Why should society deal with teenage pregnancies? Why should society deal with teenage pregnancies? Let's look at the first visual and the next visual here. I kind of wanted to show you this because here's a teenager laying on a gurney getting ready to get an abortion. They never really show those pictures, but this is what goes on in abortion clinics. But I want you to listen to the title of this article from the Arkansas Advocate newspaper. Abortion bans could reverse decline in teen births, experts warn. You hear that again. Look at it close. Abortion bans. You know how they banned abortion? They didn't really ban it. Let me help you understand what they took place in 2022 with the U.S. Supreme Court when they outlawed federal abortion. Like then they said, well, we're no longer saying that you quote unquote have a constitutional right according to the U.S. Constitution to get an abortion. But we're going to throw it back to the states and let the states decide individually what they want to do. So it was kind of like the Pontius Pilate effect. Let me just wipe my hands of this and just act like, we don't have anything to do with it, and let's send it to the states and let them decide. When technically they could have decided it themselves and told the states, no, it's murder. We don't sanction murder. The federal government does not sanction murder, so it's against the law of the land to murder babies. That's what they could have done. But what they did was they wiped their hands as if it absolves them from what's taking place. They sent it back to the states, and guess what? Now there's more abortions than there was before. Some states are even paying people and trucking them in to have abortions, like California. Paying to fly teenagers to California to get an abortion. Free plane ticket, free hotel, free everything. It seems like there's just this, it's just like an insatiable appetite to destroy babies. I don't understand it. Okay. It says, let me read this. They're concerned that, because abortion's being banned, teens are going to have their babies to full term and they're going to have their babies. Man, that's really dangerous. It says the experts are warning, right? They're going to let their babies live, and they're going to come to full birth and they're going to be born. Oh no, what are we going to do? Notice the article says, this Houston doctor says she has seen how abortion bans affect teenage girls. More of them are carrying their pregnancies to term. Oh, how horrible. They're letting their babies live. And notice the bottom line there. It says, this is talking about one of the doctors. She said they would come in and they would be very distressed. Said this doctor who spent the past decade treating underserved women and girls at community health clinics, not being able to help them get an abortion when they wanted one, she said, was so hard and so against everything that I trained for. I can't even believe what I'm reading. This is a woman speaking. She said, I trained so hard to kill babies, and now I can't do it. And now these children are coming in. They're so distressed because they can't kill their baby, and they got to let it live to full term. This is horrible. This is how sick our society has become. This is how the conscience has been seared. When a woman can talk like that, as if that's a horrible thing that the baby's going to come to full term and they can't kill it, that's totally against maternal instinct right there, because most mothers would do anything to protect their baby, even die to protect their babies. And doctors took a hypocritical, is it called a hypocritical, or what's that oath they take? It might be hypocritical. What is it? Hippocratical oath. To save lives. To save lives, not take lives. This is really messed up. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. I think I had another. We're talking about STDs and abortions, these teen pregnancies. Look at this. Look at this. This is from the New York Post. It says STD epidemic in U.S. is out of control, warns experts in the CDC. It's out of control. So, you know what we got to do because it's out of control? You know what we got to do? Well, listen to their answer. I got it underlined for you. It says, some experts say the government needs to provide more funding for STD work. It says, Harvey's group and some other public health organizations are pushing a proposal for more federal funding, including at least $500 million for STD clinics. Yeah, that'll help, right? Build some STD clinics so they can come and get tested for STDs. That'll help solve this, won't it? $500 million for some STD clinics. I hate to tell you this, they have STD clinics in the 60s when I was growing up, on every corner where I grew up. That hasn't helped. Now it's out of control, it says. It didn't help to have STD clinics. What does it help to go in and get tested to see if you got herpes or AIDS or some other disease? How does that help? How does that help? How does that help you? How does that prevent it from taking place? Why aren't they throwing that $500 million into education? Why aren't they doing that? Well, that wouldn't solve our problem because money's the problem here. We need more money. See, we need more money. We need more money. We need more funding. We're not trying to solve the problem. What we need to do is we need to have more money. That's the problem. We don't have enough money. Do you know what the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program at $7 a book could do with that $500 million? Yeah, that's right. Every man, woman, and child on the face of the planet could get a book. You're right. And possibly whoever's floating out in the space station could get one too. Right? Everybody could get a book. All right. So it says, go to the next slide because I'll show you it's not just the New York Post that's saying this. Here's science.com. It says, experts confirm U.S. is dealing with an out-of-control STI epidemic. What does it say at the bottom? Let me read this. It says, last year, NCS DDC Director David Harvey warned that if President Biden continued to cut health funding overall, his gesture toward STI prevention will inevitably fail. Quote, the Biden administration deserves praise for putting the spotlight on the most severe consequence of the nation's STI epidemic, which is congenital syphilis. Congenital syphilis is syphilis that a baby gets from the parent when it's born. Congenital meaning they get it through the delivery and birth from their mother. It says, quote, but we know all too well that federal leadership will prove hollow if communities don't have the funding they need to get the job done. See, there's that funding again. If we don't have the money, we're not going to be able to solve this problem. So how are we doing at the Muscular Dystrophy Association? How are we doing there? Because Jerry told us a long time ago. Now, he's not even alive anymore, is he? Jerry Lewis? I mean, but he raised a lot of money for muscular dystrophy. Where are we at there? Back in the 70s, we were told cancer is going to end in our lifetime. That was back in 71 or 72. How are we doing there? Where's the cancer now? Is it eradicated yet? Wake me up when it is. How are we doing? How's this money helping us? There's no way that we can't, there's no way, I'm sorry, but I'm just a realist. There's no way that we actually believe this. There's no way we actually believe this. That money's going to help this. Now, money would be useful if it was used for education, in prevention and intervention, mainly prevention. It would be useful. It would go a long way if moral character was taught, self-control, the importance of taking care of your body, respecting yourself, all the things that we've learned in the Peaceful Solution. If those things were taught consistently and with zeal, not half-heartedly because, well, I'm sleeping with guys. I'm a school teacher and I'm sleeping around. I don't know that I want to push that too hard because, I'm doing it too. We've actually had people, I'm a realist, we've actually had teachers say, hey, can we drop that part out of the book? Can we drop that part about, premarital sex? Can we just leave that out? If we do that, we'll teach it. But if we have to leave it in there, I don't feel comfortable with that. Well, I guess we won't do it then. No, we don't compromise our material. Why would you not want to teach people, look, the only way to have safe sex is to do it the right way. Right? Wait till marriage. Choose your friends, choose your mate correctly. Go through the proper steps. Make sure about this person. It's right in front of us. It's right there. You all know about it because you're learning the Peaceful Solution. Right? But I'm sad to say there's some people in this world, and I told you, even though like with the war, you could bring them the Peaceful Solution and they'll see, yeah, you're right. But they'll also see that, man, this would bring an end to my gravy train if we did this. This would put an end to our gravy train of making all this money. When in actuality, they would make more money than ever if they implemented this. You do realize that, right? Do you realize how much money would be saved if people weren't stealing? We weren't funding $12 billion a year on teen pregnancies. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but look at the next. Can I go to the next slide? I don't want to jump too far ahead, but okay. Let's read this next paragraph. It says, because teenage pregnancies have reached epidemic proportions. Notice that word epidemic. Epidemic, this is 2003. Epidemic. Epidemic means out of control. Because teenage pregnancies have reached epidemic proportions, it has created problems within our society. Many young women leave school to have their babies and never resume their studies, finding it too difficult to handle the responsibilities of school and parenthood. And whenever we think of this, you notice how the boys kind of always left out of the picture? It always focuses on the girl. The girl can't finish school. The girl can't, she's stuck with the baby. Where's the guy in all this? Where's that irresponsible, lustful little boy? What occurred to him? Why is he always sort of left out of things, Because it takes two to tango, right? It wasn't just the girl. And actually, the boy should be the stronger one, right? The boy should be the stronger one and should be leading that girl in the right direction. But no, that's not what's taking place in our society because the boys, well, they're being told they're not boys anymore too, I guess. I don't even know if they're, I know we have two genders now. Yeah, President Trump now said there's only two genders. So, yeah, we got boys and girls again. We can go back to normal, I guess. But the boys aren't being taught, how to be a boy, how to be a moral, respectful, responsible, caring young man. They're being trained by Hollywood to be kung fu experts and to be warmongers and to be disrespectful to their parents, to be unthankful toward their teachers, to be very disrespectful toward their teachers, and to look at their teachers as their enemies when their teachers are really their friends. And teachers have a huge job. They have a huge responsibility of bringing that child, teachers spend more time with that child than the parents do at school. They spend 8 hours with them a day at school. And the child goes home, and the parents, by the time they get home from work, if they're not home, and when they get home, they might spend a couple hours with them a day before they go to bed. If they even do that now. I don't even know if they do that. They got their iPhones now, so they're all in their bedroom, and they're all looking at their phone at the dinner table. No one's talking to one another. There's no interaction. I hate to say it, but it's what's taking place in our society. Now even with the gadgets, it's like even though they're all in the same room, mom's over here scrolling on TikTok, dad's over here looking at, teenage daughters over here looking, and no one's paying attention to one another. I saw a news article, I think it was a couple days ago. No, it was yesterday. That, a group of about, I don't remember how many did the study, but I think 91%, it said 91% of the people that put those stupid phones away, or at least they took the social media aspect of it out. They only used the phone for calls and the texting portion of the phone. 91% of them felt their life was so much better. They could actually concentrate. They could start reading again. They socialized a little bit. And they found out, whoa, where have I been for the last 17, 18 years since that smartphone got in my life? Where has my mind been? Where have I been? Who are you? I'm your daughter. I'm your son. Oh, okay. I thought you were just an app or some kind of AI robot. It's really, I know I'm kind of making light of it. Folks, I'm not lying here. Okay? I've even seen it in my own life. That's why I'm so adamant about it. Like right now, my eyes, because I spend a lot of time in front of a computer, but I'm not sitting there watching videos and watching, goofy stuff. I study, and it's hard enough doing that on a computer with the glasses, and my eyes, I can barely see anything. It's like really blurry, and sometimes my concentration span isn't long. So I've noticed it even in my own life that these things are having an effect. And if it's having an effect on me at 62 years old, what's it doing with these teenagers that are just starting out? Or these young people? We used to do the internet safety classes, peaceful solution internet safety classes with children in school in the elementary. And all of them had a smartphone. And all of them had smartphones nicer than mine. And all of them had Facebook accounts. And they were only 8, 9 years old. And when we asked them, how did you get a Facebook? You got to be at least 13 to get a Facebook account. Oh, I lied. Yeah? And you don't see any problem with that? No. It's just a white lie. And the teachers were all giggling and as they were scrolling on their phones when we were teaching. Okay. Did I finish that slide? Let me see. Oh, no. Okay, let me finish that paragraph. It says, many young women leave school to have their babies, never resume studies. It says many are too young to legally work, and that includes a boy. He's too young. And probably too irresponsible, because if he was responsible, would he have gotten her pregnant to begin with? Okay, so those who are of legal age to work are unable to find or maintain a steady paying job that can support their needs. As a result, they often turn to their parents to assist with child care and to government programs that are funded by taxpayers for a steady income and suitable housing. Yeah, they're shaking your pockets down. They're shaking you down. Let's see how much they're shaking us down. Can you go to the next slide? How much are they shaking us down? For teen pregnancy, $12 billion annually. I know $1 billion doesn't sound like much anymore, right? Because now we have trillionaire, we have $1 trillion company, Apple. I think Elon Musk might be worth somewhere around in there by now. I don't know some of his companies, but I know that we're in the trillionaire now. But billion, let me tell you how much $1 billion is. 1 billion is 1,000 million. Okay, 1,000 million, $1,000 million. Oh, that's a drop in the bucket. Yeah. If you earned $45,000 a year, it would take 22,000 years to get $1 billion. Did you hear that? It would take you 22,000 years to reach $1 billion if you made $45,000 a year. If that puts a little bit of perspective in it. Oh, that's not much. And they sling these numbers around now like they're nothing. You notice that? It's like, oh, we're only 40 trillion in debt. And, you know, Doge is going to fix that, right? They're looking for cuts and, you know, they're cutting some costs for us. And now they're going to cut us a dividend check, you know, $5,000, and you're not getting one. Only the rich and elite people are going to get one, not you. What a responsible person would do is if they found excess, they would pay off their debt. Right? They would take that money and just start accruing it to the debt that we owe. That's what they would do, right? Not give dividend checks to get votes. What they would do is they would say, okay, we found $2-3 trillion here. Let's apply that to paying off this debt we all owe here. That's what you do if you're responsible. It says, let's go to it says teen pregnancy costs taxpayers in the U.S. $12 billion annually on publicly financed medical care for women who experience, get this, I underlined it for you, unintended pregnancy. And on infants who were conceived unintentionally. What's wrong with that picture? You didn't intend to have a baby, right? You didn't intend. It was unintentional. You didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to, officer. I didn't mean to have that baby. I just took my clothes off. I jumped in the sack with this guy and did what people do to have babies. That's all. I didn't mean to. We need to be responsible and be accountable for what we do. That's the first thing we need to learn is responsibility. Right? Or we need to learn about responsibility and be accountable for our actions and quit acting like it's all an accident. Now, if you get drunk, if you're a teen and you go to a party and you're drinking and you're binge drinking or drinking at all, remember, it's illegal to drink, teens. If you're drinking, if you're going to a party where there's alcohol, you're already out of order right there. You're already out of order. You shouldn't be going there. But if you do go there and you start engaging in that kind of behavior, that's not unintentional. And that's not accidental. Yeah. Whoops. I think that was a song once. Whoops, I did it again. Whoops, I did it again. Whoops, I didn't mean to. Just born this way. Right? Was born this way. You know, I can't help myself. See, that's what our children are being fueled with. They're being fueled with alcohol. They're being fueled with Hollywood. They're being fueled with these songs that are telling them, you know, hey, you know, you can't help yourself. Have fun. You only live once. Right? They're being fueled with sexual innuendos, with sexual comments, with sexual lyrics, with sexual shows. They're being fueled with it everywhere they go, in the entertainment industry, in the billboards, everywhere they go, the magazines. They're just making you think, man, if you don't do this, you're really weird. So they're fueling this kind of stuff, but they're not fueling the moral character. They're not fueling what we're trying to fuel here in the peaceful solution, which is the idea that, look, all of this is avoidable. It's all avoidable. And as the author said, in a very short time, in 30 days, guaranteed, in 30 days, give me your child, give me anybody, give me an adult even, give us your children for 30 days. And let us teach them the peaceful solution, which they're actually hungering for. You don't realize how much they're hungering for it. They actually are hungering for it. Even the adults are hungering for it. Because I know, because we teach it and we get the letters from them. We get the comments from them. We get the texts and the emails from them. Man, if I only knew this before I did this. How come they're not teaching this? You know, I think I told you the last one I got a couple weeks ago, the guy goes, this is how we could make America great. Now, and this was a 50-something-year-old man. He says, forget MAGA. This is how we can make America great. Not again, because it never was great unless it was practicing moral character, right? Now, America at one time, of course, you know, they had a lot of values back in the day, especially back in the days when America first started, because the people that fled Europe and came over here, they tried to flee from a lot of those things. They tried to escape that kind of conduct, that kind of immoral conduct. They didn't want that in their lives. They came over here to escape it, and the people that they escaped from followed them over here. They couldn't leave them alone. You know, they had to come and spread it over here too, right? But, you know, hey, this is the big melting pot, America. You know, it's a big experiment. They call it the Great Experiment. Yeah, it's called a great test for all of us. You know, we got all this immoral conduct going on all around us. We're being bombarded with it constantly. And we got to know, what will we choose? Will we choose peace? Will we choose the principles that the peaceful solution is teaching us? Or will we choose to go to the other way? We got to know, because we got to be tested, right? We got to know where we're at. We got to understand what our weaknesses are and what we need to work on. But we got to stop making excuses too, though, because we're being taught diligently here in the peaceful solution, especially as teachers, right? So we don't have any excuse for our conduct. Yes, we have to have space to grow, as David said, remember? But we can't cut ourselves that much slack either. Well, you know, I got to give myself some slack. But that other guy, did you see what he did? No. We can't cut ourselves that much slack. We got to stay on top of things. We got to focus on positive moral character in our lives and making sure that we're following the principles that we're learning here. So back to the next, can you go to the next slide? It says many communities provide parenting classes, counseling, free baby food. What's wrong with that word? Free, yeah. Is it free? Nothing's free. Costs somebody something. Free clothes, diapers, baby food, as well as other services made available by both public and private organizations. Even with many of these support services, the strain of caring for another human being often becomes overwhelming to young parents. In most cases, young mothers end up with the majority of the parenting responsibilities and are unprepared for the sacrifices they must make in order to successfully raise children. Many report feeling resentful most of the time, and don't have enough energy or money to provide their child with the minimum needs. This resentment can turn to violence and aggression toward the child, and as a result, children who are born to young, unwed mothers are more likely to be emotionally and physically neglected and abused. You know, you read stories all the time of young mothers that leave their baby locked in the car, in the trunk of the car, so they can go to that party because they're young, right? And they think that I got to go to that party to have fun, you know. I didn't learn already. I got this baby. I haven't learned my lesson yet. I got to go to that party over there, you know, and have some more fun. Possibly have another baby, right? If we could only teach the parents and the children the danger of these things, they would avoid it. But we're not doing that. We're just letting them blindly go into these things. We're just letting them loose and making them think, well, you know, you're just a child. You got to have fun. You know, children, you know, they're going to make those kind of choices after all. You know, the teenagers, they're just going to do that stuff, you know. They're just going to do that. No, they're not just going to do it. Not if you teach them diligently, they won't do it. Stop making excuses for the teenagers. I know a lot of teenagers that aren't making excuses for themselves. They're actually practicing the peaceful solution, and they're serious about it. I know children that are younger than that are serious about it. They're not just giving in to the idea that I'm a child, you know, I'm a teen, I'm going to do that stuff. That's an excuse. We need to get serious about the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, and we need to practice it in our lives, right, everyone? All right, so next class is going to be, I'm out of time tonight, but the next class will be on Wednesday, 3/5/2025 at 5:30 p.m. I hope you'll be here. It's been great being your instructor tonight, and I hope to see you next time.